In this chapter, we're going to talk about the basics of PC anatomy and some of what are considered technician essentials. So we're going to talk about the parts of a computer, the hardware, the software, and the firmware, and what the differences in those are. We'll talk about some points of failure. We'll talk about the 6-step troubleshooting process that CompTIA wants you to use. And this is going to be one of those things that I'm going to tell you you need to memorize. From time to time, as we're going through these lectures, there will be certain things that I say just memorize because you're going to see that on the test, and making sure that you know that by step, name, and number is going to be important. And we'll talk about some of the PC tools that you use to assemble and disassemble a computer. We'll also talk about a few resources you can use to help prepare you for the CompTIA exam. So there are some essential parts that any computer is going to have. And now these may be a little different whether it's a laptop or a desktop, but essentially all machines are going to have these. They're all going to have some sort of storage device. They're going to have a hard drive, whether it be a traditional drive or solid state. They're going to have a motherboard and a power supply. They're going to have some sort of processor. They're all going to have memory. They're going to have a display, whether that be an external monitor or, in the case of a laptop, built in. They're going to have some sort of input device like a keyboard, a mouse. Most are going to have some sort of multimedia, some sort of like CD, DVD, or Blu-ray drive. Quite a few laptops and desktops now have biometric devices like fingerprint readers for security. Most are going to have some way to expand via adapter cards or USB ports. They're going to have ports and cables to connect all that together, and they're going to have some sort of cooling system, be it fans or water cooling or some way to cool the system. So here they're just giving an example of the front side of a PC. This is a full-size case, and you see it's got several places that you could add drives. Those labeled as number 1 are 5 1/4 drive bays. That's typically what a DVD goes in, or a traditional large-size hard drive. Number 2 in this one is a rewritable DVD. You might find that as a CD-ROM, a DVD, or a Blu-ray. Number 3 is a flash memory card reader, and you're seeing more and more of those in computers now, replacing the traditional 3.5-inch floppy drive. Also on there, number 7, the USB port. The reset switch, number 5, a power switch, number 6. There's more USBs on the bottom. There's also a place to plug in a microphone or speakers, and in this particular computer, there's also a FireWire, which is also called an IEEE 1394 port. FireWire was something that Apple invented that they thought would take off. It's really only used for video now from certain types of video recorders, but it is a standard. It can be used for other things. You will occasionally find a FireWire hard drive, for example. Here we see the rear of a typical computer. We've got the case fan as number 1. Number 1 is the power supply fan. Number 2 is the case fan. You see 3 is an empty expansion slot. In this one, number 5 is a TV tuner card. You don't see those very often, but there are some of those. There are more USB ports, noted as number 7. You'll notice on more modern computers, there are going to be lots of different USB ports. Most desktops and laptops now are going to have built-in Ethernet for number 16. And then it's not uncommon to see VGA and DVI for video, and we'll talk more about video later. Then 10 and 11 on this particular computer are PS2 ports. Those are really not as common anymore, but occasionally you'll find them on a few motherboards, and those are used to hook up PS2 keyboards and mice. So internally, we have lots of different connections, and you can tell this one's actually kind of clean inside. The cables are not completely jumbled everywhere. Number 8 are some empty drive bays that you could put external hard drives in, or you could put CD-ROM drives, or you can put a bracket and put an internal hard drive. Number 11 in this one are the 3.5-inch drive bays that you can put more hard drives in. Number 4 you'll see is the fan. 1 is the power supply. Here we're looking at a laptop, and on this laptop we've got Ethernet on the side. It's got an HDMI video port. You're going to see more of those on more modern computers as well. HDMI is the standard that almost all high-definition TV uses now. This one has a proprietary docking station, and you'll see lots of laptops that have some sort of proprietary port on them. That is a port that on most laptops you add a device and it will not only charge the battery, but it gives you access to a keyboard and an external monitor and things like that. This one in particular also has a flash memory card reader and an express card expansion slot. Here we're looking at the other side and we see USB ports. This one has a modem jack. You don't see that very much anymore, but occasionally you will still find a modem. Some sort of built-in optical drive, and then the connection for power. So some points of failure on both laptops and desktops. A big one is overheating. If the fans fail, it is very possible that everything in the computer will just get too hot. Now, luckily, most modern computers have sensors so that if those fans stop, they will alert you that the fan has stopped or even shut down the computer. I have seen examples on YouTube, and you can do a quick Google search and you'll find these for yourself, where people have overridden those sensors to show what will happen, and with a fast AMD processor that's overclocked, it will actually melt through the motherboard. It gets so hot if there's no fan or no sort of water cooling or anything on it. A loose peripheral card can also cause the entire system to shut down because it can short it out or it might not detect it properly. Loose memory is a big one, or a bad memory module. This will keep the computer from coming on at all. Probably then the number one failure in a computer is a drive failure. This is especially true with traditional hard drives that spin, because that moving part is primarily the biggest thing that fails in a computer. While not common, other things that can happen are the failure of the battery, the BIOS, or a front panel failure, where a reset switch or a power switch sticks or the status lights quit working. So things in a computer are divided into 3 general categories: hardware, software, and firmware. And hardware is generally the part of the machine that you can touch. Hardware is the actual computer itself, the cards you put in it, the hard drive. Sources of failure with these include loose connections, physical damage, electrical damage. If you have a bad storm and it spikes your machine, it's going to do some damage. Or incompatibility with other devices. Not everything works together. Software is the software that goes on the computer, or the drivers that control the hardware. That's your operating system. Applications like Word and Excel that you run, protocols that transmit data over your network, and then internal and external commands that control the system. So CompTIA has a troubleshooting process that is 6 steps, and this is something that you just need to memorize. You will need to know these for the exam. Step 1, identify the problem. Step 2, establish a theory of probable cause. Step 3, test that theory. Step 4, establish a plan of action to resolve the problem. Step 5, verify full system functionality. And then step 6, document your findings. The questions that you will get on this are going to be some where they say, what is step 3, and give you a list. And then in the application part, they will tell you that, these things have been done, and say, for example, the system's working and you verified it, what's the next step? And what they're wanting you to do then is to realize they're at step 5, so the next step is step 6, document the findings. So working inside of a PC, you're going to find as you get into this that different cases open in different ways. If you've got a Dell case, for example, it may have a hinge on the top that you pull and one side comes off. With some cases, you'll also find that it's common to have what are called thumb screws, or these big screws that you can unscrew without a screwdriver. And some cases have traditional screws that you need a screwdriver to open. One thing, no matter what, though, before you open your machine is to protect yourself from electrostatic discharge, and we'll talk more about that. Some common tasks are going to be to connect cables or drives. Check them when you open a machine. They do come loose occasionally. It's very easy to knock a drive cable loose when you're working on something else. Installing a PCI card is a common thing. Maybe you're adding a video or sound card, or you're changing a video card. Replacing the power supply or the hard drive. Maybe you're going to upgrade memory. And they added installing USB support, but it's not going to be very many computers that you're going to find without USB. Now, what we could say there is installing USB 3 support, which when we talk about the types of USB, you'll find is one of the newer, faster types. So here is an example of a basic toolkit for a computer. This is just some components that you'll use pretty often. Screwdrivers, they show that number 2 and number 3, you'll use a couple of different types. I keep a Phillips and a flathead in mine. Number 5 is a great thing to have in case you're working on a laptop or inside of a computer, a jeweler's tool, screwdriver, because there's some screws that are small that you may need to take off. Number 13 is also a great one, a little 3-claw retrieval in case you drop a screw down in the computer. A pair of pliers is a good thing to have. They mention a Torx and a hex driver. That's also something good. A hex driver, especially if you want to open up a hard drive. Now, be aware that when you open a hard drive, you're going to invalidate any kind of warranty it has. But if you have an old one and you want to see what it looks like on the inside, you're going to need a hex driver to be able to do that. So here we are given an example of how to protect yourself from electrostatic discharge. And they're showing it with a wrist strap, and they're strapping it to the case and putting the wrist strap on. Now you should do that and put it on while it's still grounded. Then you can unplug the computer. What I'll call the poor man's way of doing this is also after you've shut the computer down, but while it's still plugged in, touch the power supply with the back of your hand. And the reason you always want to do that with the back of your hand is because if there is a charge and you get shocked, it'll make your hand grip up. If you do that forward, you might actually grip the the power supply, and if that's the part that's shocking you, it's going to continue to shock you. If you do it with the back of your hand and your hand grips, it'll be fine because your hand will pull away automatically. Some other tools you may have is an AC/DC voltage meter. This is great if you think the problem is actually the power coming in and not the computer itself. A power supply tester is not a bad thing to have. And then some toolkits will include loopback plugs. And a loopback plug is basically just a plug that goes into a port that's tied to itself. And the way it works is it sends a signal between the sending and receiving wires on a port. So it sends a signal and then looks for the receipt of a signal to verify that the port is indeed working. Some other tools you will occasionally find, a cable tester. This is great for networks. A punch down tool that's used in some larger networks to actually punch the wires down to a block that then runs from the block to a telco or to your network devices. Loopback plugs toner probes. Toner probes are used to find wires. This is, again, important in a network closet where you may have lots of wires and you need a way to determine what wire you're working with. Wire strippers and a crimper, those are also good if you're going to be making wires or changing wires. So that is a rundown of basically the internals of a computer. We talked about common hardware failures, the CPU and how it receives data. We talked about IRQs, what electrostatic is and why we need to worry about it. And that is a summary of Chapter 1. Thanks for listening.